So it's Monday and my class are doing timed essays in Nat 5 biology. I want to provide them with some handwritten feedback. Now there's so many ways that I can do this using my Connected Falkirk device, and we're going to go through a few examples of these just now. Now the first thing to point out is that written feedback does not always need to be individualised. It can be to a group or a class, and it can also be done live during a lesson by combining it with verbal feedback. So let's imagine some of my pupils want feedback there and then. Now I sometimes get my pupils to write their essays working in pairs on a desk, so we're pretending this is a Nat 5 biology timed essay. If it was on paper, I might take it in and mark it another time, but that's not giving them timely feedback, as they probably won't get that back until at least the next time I see them, if not later. For quick feedback that I can do at the time, the first method I can use is I can take a photo of their work. Now in this case, as I said, I quite like my class to do it on desks, so I would take a photo of their desk and then I would then mark it up. So here I've taken a photo of my pupils' essay on genetic engineering that they have written as a pair on their desk. Now I've taken a photo of it using the camera app on my iPad, and now what I've done is I've just come into photos to look at it. If I want to mark this up, what I do is I hit edit on the top right hand side, and then I'm looking for the pencil icon. So it's again on the top right hand side, roughly in the same place again. Now you can use your finger, or you can use a stylus or an Apple Pencil if you have one, but you can see here that this brings up the toolbar at the bottom, and the toolbar has lots of different tools that I can use, and this is available in any of the core apps on your Apple device, on your iPad. You can mark up and annotate in most of those apps using the exact same tools as well. So it might be that I, for example, might want to just write onto it with a pen. So the pen option's here, and I can see if I tap it, whatever tool I'm using moves slightly up the way. If I tap the pencil on the left, you can see I've got some colour options on the right hand side that I can change it to, and I can also tap the colour wheel and choose from some more of the different options that are here as well. If I also tap the pencil twice, I then get the options of changing the opacity, so how basically thick that line is along the top, or I can change basically how blurry it is using the sliding scale around the bottom. Once that's done, I can then draw directly onto my diagram. So I'm going to choose red, and I'm going to give some little ticks where I think there's some good information or wording used here. I'm also can zoom in and out, which is really, really handy. There's other little maybe mistakes that I want to highlight in here. So maybe I want to highlight using the highlighter, and I might want to increase the thickness of this bit here. That's maybe a little bit much, so I'll put it down a bit. So cut here, that's not really enough information. So then I might want to say after it, just do ... and then our wee symbol in biology for meaning there's information missing here. So I can use these and go through. If I make any mistakes, I can use the rubber and I can rub things out. There's also the option to use pencil as well instead, and also I can use the lasso tool, but that's not really useful in this case for annotating. If I was annotating on a graph, what I could do, I've taken pictures of my pupils' graph work before on graph paper, and then I've used the ruler. So you tap ruler, you can then drag it with your fingers, just take 2 fingers and you can move it around, and this means that I can draw really nice straight lines, which can help if I'm trying to correct any graph work they have. To get rid of the ruler, just tap the button again. If you don't have a stylus, you might want to add text instead. So if you tap the plus button on the right hand side, I can then tap text and that will open a text box, and then I can double tap in the text box and say excellent, first response, and I can give other bits of feedback, and I can resize that and I can drag it around as well. And you can also tap the 2 little A's at the bottom and you can change things like the text size, how it's aligned, or even you've got a few options for font as well. Now once I've done that, I can then tap anywhere on the screen to go back to my general toolbar. Again, if I tap that plus, there's some other options here. I might want to use the magnifier to kind of zoom it in on some of the pupils' work. What I might also want to do is I might want to add in some shapes. So maybe I don't think their human cell was done very well, so maybe I want to try and get rid of that or show them how I want them to draw it instead. So I might tap the circle, and again I can change what this looks like. So I can change the colour, I can also change the thickness of the line or make it a whole circle instead, and I can drag this round. So there's lots of different options using that annotation tool of things that you can do. Now, if you don't like it being across the bottom of your screen, if you've never really used the markup and annotation tools before, if you hold the top of it and drag it to the side, it'll basically disappear. It's still there, I can still write using my pen, but it's basically hidden and I can tap it to reopen it. Something else you can do is you can drag it to a different side of the screen if you want. So if I'm right-handed, I might want to have it over at the left. If I'm left-handed, I might want to have it over at the right, or I might want to have it along the top instead. So if you just drag it, you can move it wherever you like, and as I said, you can minimise just by dropping it to a side. There's also the back and forward buttons if you make any mistakes as well. If I'm quite happy with my marking up, I can tap done. And when I tap done again, that'll take me back into my camera roll, and you can see here my marked up image. I know it's not done very well there. If my pupil had either sent me this via airdrop, or they had then given me this in a different way, or I'd just taken the photo, I could then airdrop that feedback to them by tapping the share button on the top left hand side, airdrop, and then finding the correct device and tapping it. And that would mean that I can give that feedback back to them for them to keep. So now I could take this one step further if I had a large class and maybe I don't want to mark 10 to 15 essays during another bit of the lesson or take them home to mark later. I could do the exact same thing I did there and model feedback and go through these essays with the class by using my iPad as a visualiser. So your iPad can become a visualiser when it's paired with an Apple TV. Or you can use the kind of dongle ones as well that allow you to connect. So all I would do in that situation is the exact same thing I did there. I would go on, I would take my photos and whatever I wanted to use as examples, I would go into edit, etc. But what I would do is I would join my iPad to my Apple TV to be able to show this to the class and model what I just did there at the same time. To join an Apple TV, you take one finger and you swipe down on the right hand side of the screen. Underneath the Bluetooth button, you'll see two rectangles, and you tap that, and that is the screen mirroring button. And then if you have an Apple TV, it should basically pop up at that point there, and you can join it. Then anything that you're doing on the screen, including all of my writing, etc. that I was doing there, will be basically cast on the screen for the whole class to see. And that's a really, really good way of modelling that feedback. So if you want to learn more about the variable feedback that can go on alongside these examples and how to make it more effective, please take a look at the materials and video from our last CPD session, which is available on our blog post. Now, I know a lot of people use Teams as a virtual learning environment to assign and gather responses and work. So how could I give written feedback effectively using Teams? Well, has anyone used the whiteboard feature before? If not, I do think you'll really like this. So let's imagine that one of my pupils has handed in their biology essay on a Teams assignment instead. So say this is an extended response essay they could be asked to do in their exam, and maybe I want to give them some individualised, specific and targeted feedback. Well, Whiteboard makes that really, really easy to do. So as a teacher, when I created this assignment, which is called Cell Structure Extended Response, you can see that on my Teams just now, what I did was I made sure that in my instructions, so if I go in here, I included a bit that said complete the following 4-mark extended response questions on the whiteboard attached and then submit for marking. Now that means that pupils will put their answers on the whiteboard that I've given them their own copy of, which you can see at the bottom here. So you have to make sure you set the whiteboard so students can edit their own copy, and that means that the pupils can add their working in whatever way they want. So they could use a stylus to add it, they could use a post-it note, and they could add text. There's so many different ways that they can put their answer onto that whiteboard. And what it also means is when they then hand it in to me, I can then give them feedback using the whiteboard they've already worked on. So I can use all of those things like post-it notes and putting links for videos, etc., which I'll show you just now. So if I come out of this, you can see here that one of my pupils has turned in their work. Ignore the turned in by teacher. That's just because I'm acting as the pupil and the teacher here. So if I click into this, it'll take me straight into the whiteboard view. It might take a wee second to load, and here you can see my pupils' work. So they've done an essay for me using the text box, and they've also drawn me a couple of pictures of animal and plant cells. Now in my subject biology you can get marks for diagrams as well, so this is good that they've put in some drawings too, and this is particularly why I like them using Whiteboard, because if they use some other different apps, or if they put it in things like Microsoft Word, I know there is a drawing feature in there, but I just think this makes it easier for them to be able to add lots of different things to their whiteboard. Now there's a couple of things I can now do that I'm on Whiteboard. I can either mark this in here, and there are options on the left hand side, and the view within Teams is pretty good, but there's a few options that aren't available if you mark within this app, and some people might also find it hard to mark when it's only a smaller proportion of the screen. Obviously I can zoom in, but you still have all of the stuff around the outside because you're still within Teams. So if you tap the settings cog on the top right hand side, what you can do is go down to the bottom here and tap open in app. So this means that if you have the Whiteboard Microsoft app downloaded on your iPad, you can open it in there, which makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to show you that just now. So it's going to give me the option, and I'm just going to say open the app. So what this will do in a wee second is it'll load the exact same whiteboard with the exact same answer for my pupils, but what I have now is on the left hand side, I now have the option for a few other things that I can add in as well. Adding images is only possible if you're in the app. Basically, it's not possible if you're doing it within Teams. It has to be within the app if you want that option. All the other options are the exact same here. So whatever I update on here will update on Teams as well. It's the same permissions and stuff that are there. So the great thing about Whiteboard is when I'm giving feedback, I can give it in lots of different ways for this. And what this allows me to do is I can mark this up, and I can give feedback directly. I can mark it as a teacher. I can leave links and videos that might be useful as additional feedback. And this allows me to be able to represent ideas quickly in order to explain feedback to the pupils. And I can also check and go in and see how they're getting on with it as well, which is quite nice. So obviously this pupil has handed in their final piece of work, but if I was in class or I had some pupils that were doing home learning or doing his homework, I could actually go in and check their whiteboards every so often and see how they were getting on, because they update live, so I can see that as well. So let's go through the different ways that I can leave feedback on here. So the first thing is I can use the marking toolbar at the top. So if I've got a stylus, Apple Pencil, or if I want to use my finger, I can go through the essay, I can tap the pens and change colours. I really like this one. And I can go through and start marking. So the first line said animal and plant cells both have a nucleus. That is correct. So I'm going to tick it and I'm going to give it 1 mark. Okay. I can also use things like the highlighter. So animal and plant cells have a cell wall, that's fine. Animal cell have mitochondria. But then what they've done here is they've missed a part. So I might highlight this and I might maybe add in a comment here. And because they've missed the next part they need for a comparison mark here. Now, other things you can do, they've got rubbers, there's rulers, there's the option to draw shapes, etc. as well. So there's all those types of options. So in this bit at the bottom, they've made a mistake. So this essay is meant to be about plant cells, and what they've done here is they've actually drawn a bacterial cell. So I might want to put a wee note saying that this is a bacterial cell, and maybe I want to give them a hand and actually start off a drawing of a plant cell for them, and then maybe give them an instruction. So for example, finish this. Now, you might have noticed my handwriting is absolutely terrible, so there are lots of other ways that you can also give feedback, which I quite like in Whiteboard. So if I go to the left-hand side and I tap the plus button, I can also tap the pencil above that, and that'll get rid of that toolbar if I don't want it. There's loads of other ways that I can leave feedback. So the first way is I might want to leave a note. So if I tap the note and then I tap a colour that I want, so maybe I want this colour, a note's going to come up and I can leave some feedback on this. So I might say here, need to have a comparison to get this mark. Okay. And then what I can do here is I can edit this. I can change the colour if I want to. I can make it bold, italic or underlined. I can duplicate this if I want that comment. Maybe they've made a similar mistake a few times, and I can also drag it as well to make it bigger or smaller. There is the option to like it as well, so maybe if a pupil has seen your comment and has then changed it, you might want to get them to react to that to say that they've done something with it. Other options here, we have text, so I can do just the same as the pupils. I can add a text bit and say, well done. This is a good start to your extended response. You can also see there that I could also put in emojis and stuff if I want to at that point. Now the problem is they've written in black, so I might want to change the colour of this. So I might put it in pink so they get to know that it's me. Other options I've got here as well is I can add shapes. So maybe if I wanted to actually add a shape to my essay or maybe circle something they've done, I can change the shape that I've got here. I can edit what's inside of it, the different colours as well. I can basically edit that in lots of different ways, and I can actually also put information inside it as well. So the shapes might be quite handy. The other thing I quite like is the reactions. So if I think that's a really good point, I might give them a thumbs up for that, or a little clap. We're doing really well there. And it's also got ticks and crosses as well that I can use. Now we get into the more interesting stuff. So I can also add things like images. So if there's something that I particularly think, right, there's a good little picture that might help them with this bit of their essay for their feedback, I might tap the images button and then either take a photo or choose a file from my library or a photo library that's on my iPad. The other thing I can do, I'm going to skip templates for now, I can add in documents and links to different things. So for example, if I tap documents and go to my files, there we go, so written feedback, and in this folder I have some summary notes. Now, what might be quite useful is, say they've done this essay and I think, right, there's a few things they really do need to go back and revise here. If that's the case, I could give them the exact slides they need, or I can give them the exact pages from a PDF or summary notes that I have. So any documents that you have, as long as they've been uploaded to your OneDrive or to the classroom files, you can access them here, and you can see down the left-hand side there are the different classes. So if you know that you've put notes for things in their classroom, you can grab those straight away from here. So let's say, for example, I tap the cell structure PowerPoint that I've used and I tap select. Now, I don't need to give them this entire PowerPoint on the whiteboard to look at. There's only parts of this that relate to the essay they've done. So they've done an essay on animal cells and plant cells. So I'm going to select those two, and I'll have a think and have a look through if there's anything else I want to add in there. So I actually only want 2 of these slides out of 39. So I tap insert 2, and there you go. So I could actually do a little section down under this essay, and I could put some information for revision for them. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to use my pen again. So I can give them feedback on their essay, but I could also make a little revision section for them with those 2 slides. What I also might want to do is tap documents again, go back to my files, go back to written feedback, and I might want to add the summary notes page as well. That's the most useful to them. So if I select it and go in, and that's the page I really want, and again tap insert. Now this is great for pupils because a lot of the time you'll find if you ask them to go away and revise that part again, they're going to get lost trying to find the exact thing they want to look for, whereas now I've got this here, pupils can zoom in, they can read the PowerPoint slides and the bits of the notes that I want, and if I know that I'm giving the same type of feedback for a lot of pupils, I can just copy and put in the exact same thing on each whiteboard as well. So I think it's really nice that you can put in those documents and not just link to them, and they're actually there as well. Now it might be that I then want to give them a task to do, so I've given them some revision to help them make that essay better, but maybe I would like to put in a certain task for them to then complete. So I'm going to say task. So we'll talk about DIRT tasks, so tasks to give them when they're doing some independent study after. So I'm going to stick some tasks for them to do underneath here. Now to do this, I can tap the plus button again, and I'm going to insert a link. Now, maybe I want them to watch a YouTube video. So let's go into YouTube here, and I have a YouTube video that I've made before, all about cell structure. So I'm just going to copy that URL, go back into my board, and I'm going to paste it, and then tap insert, and that's the YouTube video now there. Now that's probably going to go under revision still, so there you go. If I tap it, it'll open it up again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that up into the revision section. For the task that I want my pupils to complete, maybe there is a Google form, for example, that asks some questions about that topic because I think they need a little bit of revision on it. So again, if I go in and I find the Google form that I want to use, and all I want to do here is tap send, grab the URL and copy it, and again, I can just paste it straight into here. So here we go, it's made it quite small, so I'm going to drag that to make it a bit bigger, and that's the link for them to do their task afterwards. So it's quite a nice way of linking different things. I've put in a Google form there, it could be a Microsoft form, it could be anything else that you'd like them to do, but it means that I can give them multimodal feedback all in one place, and pupils can then get this back and again draw and write their answers or a redraft on there as well. And I just think that's a really nice way of being able to combine all of these different things. Something I might finally want to do is use maybe one of the templates. So if I tap into templates here, there's lots of different templates that have already been made by Microsoft. So maybe I want to look at brainstorming, or I might want to look at, I can search as well. Now this is all about comparing. So here's an option for compare and contrast, which is what I'm asking them to do in this essay. What are the similarities and differences between animal and plant cells? So if I tap this, it's going to add it in, and I'm going to drag it down here so it's away from all that other stuff. And here's a wee task for them to do. So this is a nice template it's made. I can edit any of this, so I can delete that bit. I could rename that and just say that this is compare and contrast task. And then on here, I might want to make sure that on the left hand side, they're going to put things about animal cells. On the right hand side, I want them to put things about plant cells. And then in the middle, they're going to put similarities for both. Pupils can edit these again, change the colours, move them around. And then maybe on the right hand side, I then want them to do their redraft using what they've done there. So I'm going to delete these because I don't think they need them. There we go. So now I've given that pupil so much feedback, and I've also given them tasks that they can do after. So I've given them written feedback here, along with some handwritten feedback, some typed feedback, some emojis and different kind of reactions for it as well. I've drawn some stuff to help them too here. I've also given them specific revision tasks, so I've given them specific slides or pages from the summary notes, and also a video link as well so that they can go away and refresh their memory of it. I've given them a form, a Google form that they can then go and do as one of their tasks, and I've also given them a template so they can compare and contrast and then redraft their work for me. And using Teams, I can then send this back to them and they can then do that and hand it in again. So if I back out of this, and I go back into Teams, I'm going to continue using Whiteboard and Teams. It might take a little second for the app to update. And now you can see I've come onto Teams. I did all of that within the app, but because I came out of Teams onto there through that link, all of my stuff that I've done is now there. So as I said, if you find it easier to use the bigger screen, what you can do is, as I said, tap that button and come back out into Teams. Now, if I was then doing it, I would give my pupil their mark. So I would say you get 1 mark there. And then I might say return and return for revision instead of just returning, because I do want them to redraft, do things with that and hand it back in. So I'm going to return that there. And if I want to, I can leave a wee comment for feedback as well. But I hope you can see there how it's really, really useful. How it's really, really useful to use that whiteboard feature. I think it's something that's really handy for pupils to use and for teachers as well. I know I like having everything in one place there, and I think it's a nice way to keep a track of that feedback and give them as many different types of feedback as we can. So that's how to provide written feedback in 3 different ways. So taking photos and marking them up, using the Apple TV as a visualiser, and finally using Whiteboard feature in Teams.